All right, we are now on the third, although the screen says second, apparently that's a typo, because we are on the third um, responsibility of the operating system, and that is to allocate addresses on the hard drive. Now, wait a minute, that sounds familiar. Let me go back a slide, if it will let me. Allocate addresses in memory. Basically, by the way, allocate, find a home for, find a spot for. If I said allocate those tools, that means you'll find a spot for. So big fancy word. It's common in computers, but I don't think it's that common outside of computers. Allocate addresses. Go find a home for this data. That's all it's really saying. Hard drives are permanent storage. Now, permanent is in quotes because nothing's permanent. That just means that you turn your computer off, it's still there. The apps you install on your phone, when you turn your phone off, turn back on, you still have those apps on your phone. Pictures that you store on your phone, they're still there. They're not permanent. Your phone could crash. The drive in your phone could die, and your heart in your computer could die. So I don't mean permanent. It just means that it lasts longer than while the computer's running. It is slow. Now, the good news is it's not as slow as it used to be, but it's still much slower than RAM. So it's a necessary evil if they simply do not have hard drives and permanent storage as fast as RAM. It would just be too expensive. It would be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to have a computer that had the same amount of space as with the same speed as RAM. Hard drives are measured by their capacity as well. So these are both storages. Think of these as boxes where we store numbers. Two of the most well-known manufacturers. I need to amend this list because of the next slide. I just realized that this is slightly old information, but still very relevant. Western Digital and Seagate are the two most common manufacturers of hard drives. Excuse me. Typical capacities. Now, notice the difference here. Let me go back a slide. Memory, 4 to maybe 16 gigabytes would be really a high-end computer. They start on hard drives at over 250, and they go up to, notice I went to the next unit, it's not gigabytes, it's terabytes, trillions of bytes. So 4 trillion bytes, or that would be like saying 4,000 gigabytes. So they're much larger in size. Again, you need that if you store large amounts of music and pictures and videos and lots of data. So takeaway from this screen is it's longer lasting, let's say that. It is much slower. They're measured by their bytes as well. And they are, Western Digital and Seagate is the two most common brands or manufacturers of hard drives. And now let's mention here, how much data do you need? We sell computers to people who browse the web, check their bank account, and not much else. They don't need very large hard drives. They're not storing much. It's like your phone. You've probably had to make that decision of which model phone do you want to get, how much space is on it, and you decide, well, I do lots of pictures or videos, and so you increase that. I have a 3 terabyte drive and a 250. I use two different drives. We're going to talk about why in a moment. One of the nice things about both memory and hard drive, I didn't mention this on the previous video, is that they're actually very easy to swap out. So it's not very uncommon for someone to buy a one size drive and 2 years later go out and buy another one and just move all their stuff over to it. It's kind of like buying a bigger storage facility, at the self-storage. You can just buy, upgrade, and then you get to get all your friends and help you move it to a bigger one. So these are the size of drives. These are the brands of drives. Now let's talk about a few issues with drives. We already talked about swap file. I'll mention it briefly again. Swap file just means that your memory is full, so therefore it starts putting things on the hard drive instead. The virtual memory, and you can't see why they call it virtual, meaning not real. So when you have virtual memory, it looks like memory, but it's not really the same speed as regular memory, so therefore it's not nearly as good. But it still works. It allows your program to continue running even though it's out of memory. Fragmentation. Fragmentation is the process of splitting up files on a hard drive. Why would you split up a file? Well, let's think about it. Let's say you start typing a school report, and you type and you type 3 pages. You hit save, and you go to bed for the day. The next day you come in and you hook your phone up to your computer and you download, let's say, some videos that you took on your phone. Let's say, and it doesn't normally happen this way, but let's just pretend that that video got stored in the boxes or the bytes directly after your 3-page paper. So in this example, let's say this is right here is your paper, and then this is your video. Well, now you open up your paper to do another 3 pages for school, and you type 3 more pages. Now it's in memory, remember? As you're typing, it's just memory. So now you have 6 pages, and you hit the save button. Now, Microsoft Word says, Windows, operating system, save it, go. I don't care where you put it, just save it. And the operating system says, okay. It goes and looks at your hard drive, and uh-oh, there's no room right after the 3 pages it stored before. So it just goes and finds another 3 empty spots and puts the 3 pages there. That's fragmentation, fragmenting your file. Now, every so often your computer, generally many years ago, you would have to do this manually, and people would never do it, and then it would be a huge improvement in speed when they actually defragmented their computer. Defragment means to put the pieces back together. So the problem with fragmenting is, let's say you have to go to this spot, and then the computer has to, and I'm going to explain about platters and spinning here in a moment, but then it has to jump to another spot. Well, remember how I said that this is not random access? That was memory. Hard drives are not random access. Think of this like a VCR. It has to spin around or fast forward and get to that spot. Now, yes, that happens in a blink of a second, but in computer terms, that's a very slow process. So generally, every couple of weeks, your computer in the background, without you even doing anything, defragments your computer. And what it does is it just goes and looks at all the pieces, picks them up, puts them in memory, shuffles them all around, finds a spot where everybody can have their entire file together, and puts it back down together. So for example, here it defragmented and put all these pictures right back together. It makes your computer run faster. This process is happening generally automatically, so I want you to know what's happening, although it's now happening automatically and you don't have to worry about it. You can fragment or defragment. You don't want to fragment, but I believe you can defragment your hard drive by, I think you have to go to, I have not done this in so long because you don't have to. You can right click, go to Properties, Tools, and there's a defragmentation. This option will defragment files on your drive. And what does that mean? So if quiz question, defragment or fragment to split the file up or put the file back together. Now, that's not done on all types of drives, which we're going to get to in a moment, but on any drive that has platters, that's what's going to be, that's taking place. Platter versus solid state. Okay, now this is where I've had to update my slides in the last 2 years or so because there's a new type of drive. For years and years and years, from the early 80s until the early 2000s, a good 30, 40 years of computers, hard drives, do I have a picture of a hard drive? I don't think I do. Yes, I do. Good. Hard drives look like this, the picture on the left. This is a hard drive. This is a round platter that spins. This is the needle. It's like a record player. This needle would move back and forth while the platter would spin. It actually has sometimes 1, 2, and 3 of these platters, which means there are needles that can read both the top and the bottom of each platter at the same time. So this is how drives acted for decades and decades. And by the way, the reason we call it hard drive to this day is because this platter, as compared to removable storage, is a hard platter. You know, it's a solid piece. It's not bendable. Now, the revolution, so to speak, started with flash drives. If you recall, flash drives, you know, a very convenient way of plugging a flash drive into a USB port and saving a file. Those became popular a good 10, 12, 14 years ago, but they were slow. They have increased the speed and increased the speed and increased the speed and really worked on those technology of chips to the point now that they've also made them smaller and smaller so they can fit more onto a disk. So nowadays, let me go back to my picture over here. You can buy drives that look like this. They're much smaller, which is not that important. The most important feature is that they have chips inside of them, not platters, which means they don't spin. So let's think about that. If they don't spin, it automatically makes them faster. If they don't spin, they don't have the wear and tear of mechanical movement, which generally will shorten the life of a hard drive. You don't want your hard drive to die because that may mean all your stuff is gone. So hard drives have come out in the last few years and these are called solid state. Solid state meaning those chips, they do not have moving parts. Now let's jump one more generation, and in the past probably 3 years, they've been out longer than that, but in the past 2 to 3 years they've become very popular and the price has come way down. And we call these M.2. Now these have a nice logical name. Well, so do the hard drives, solid state drives, but these are called M.2s. It's a code. Someone named them. I don't know why. And they're even smaller. And you can tell by this. Let me show you a picture here. This is a speed test run on 3 different types of computers. On this one, now we talked about hard drives. We care about how much they store, but we also care how fast they are. Remember how we said swap files are slow because they write that slow? So if we could speed up the drive, then the swap file would be faster. And even if something's not in swap file, you have to load things at some point. If you open up a file, it's on your drive to load into memory even the first time. The speed of your drives are important as well. So this drive is a hard drive, a traditional speed hard drive, just like this picture here. And according to this program, it scores, and we'll just look at this top number on each of these, 102 megabytes per second. Don't worry about the megabytes per second, just remember that number, 102. Along came solid states. This is the speed of a solid state drive, 557. Wow, 5 times faster by moving to the solid state. Then, got a little typo. Oh, I'm sorry. M.2s came around, and this is a typical speed on an M.2 drive, 2500. So you're either 25 times faster. Imagine loading up a large video clip 25 times faster, or saving something 25 times faster, or even 5 times faster than the previous new technology. So again, you don't need to memorize any of these numbers. Just know slowest, faster, fastest. Now, why would anyone still buy this if you can buy this? Well, the reasons are getting fewer each day because originally these were small in size. It would be very expensive to buy a drive bigger than 128 gigabytes. Remember, this is 2000. However, these prices have come way down. Again, in the next video, we're gonna go computer shopping, and we're gonna look at prices of all of these and just kind of give you a realistic, practical look at the prices of all these. So these are still more expensive than these for the size. A 2 terabyte SSD is going to be a lot more expensive than a 2 terabyte hard drive. So generally what happens is people buy these for their Windows to run on and their Photoshop to run on and their Microsoft Word and their games, and then they'll add an existing slower but larger hard drive to store maybe their 80,000 pictures and their hundreds of music files and their videos, because those do not need to be accessed every day. They just need to hold on to them, but you're not needing to open them up every day. It doesn't really matter how fast a picture is, because you may not look at that picture but once every 3 years. So a very common, and that's why I mentioned earlier, I have a 3 terabyte and a 250 solid state. My computer does not support this technology yet because it's so new, but I have one of these and one of these. The computers at school, one of my main requirements when we purchased computers last year was to only purchase SSDs and not hard drives, because I wanted your computers to be as fast as possible. And yes, moving to solid states makes a huge difference in how fast your computer seems. Okay, been a lot on hard drives, but we got 2 more things. Physical and virtual implementation. All that means is, let's look at this picture of fragmentation again. The idea of storing things into folders, like My Pictures or documents or on your desktop, means nothing in the physical actual storage of the drive. So you may tell Windows store that on the desktop. The operating system ignores that, and it just stores it anywhere in the billions of addresses it has to store data. And well, I'll show you in a moment how it keeps track of that. But it just shows you that file grouped together with other files in the same folder. But in the actual drive, they could be stored anywhere. All these files could be stored in different folders, but they all are side by side on the drive. On the opposite hand, files that are in the same folder could be stored in all different parts of the drive. And you can kind of get an idea of that because of fragmentation. That's not the only reason why, but you can see how we could start a file here, we have to rewrite it way down here. So I just mentioned that. Just understand that folders have to do with a virtual implementation, how it just appears to you on the screen. Whereas the operating system is only concerned about the physical storage and just keeping track of all these addresses. So that's physical and virtual. Last thing about hard drives is what's known as the FAT table. FAT table is actually an acronym for File Allocation Table. Very important, although it's kind of completely hidden and unseen. It's a very important concept. This is an example of a hard drive, a physical implementation. So we just care about ones and zeros. Here you're seeing it in its hexadecimal representation. You can see that because there's A's and E's and F's and so on. But here's the idea. In the very beginning of each hard drive, it reserves a little area for this FAT table. And the FAT table is kind of like an index to a book. It says that I want to store this file number 2. And it is storing it in this location. And this file is in the 9th location, and this file is in the A location, this file is in the B location. And now this could actually be an address like 38,420,000. It's some physical location on this drive out of billions of addresses. It's just a listing that says this drive is in this spot. So when you're Microsoft Word, let's kind of put this whole process together. Microsoft Word gets loaded into RAM, and you hit File Open. You go down to the listing of your files, and you double-click on your science report. The operating system says, okay, that file is not in memory. It's on the hard drive. So I'm going to go look at the hard drive, and specifically, I'm going to look at the FAT table. And in the FAT table, I'm going to find the name of the file, and then beside it, it's going to say, that's at index 12 million. And then I'm going to move either this needle, or I'm going to access whichever chip is storing 12 million, and I'm going to start reading ones and zeros back to the operating system, which will then put it back into memory, which will then get displayed on the screen in Microsoft Word. So a FAT table is a listing of every file on your computer and where it's located. Now, I say that to warn you a few things when it has to do with FAT tables. Well, warn you and something that can be good. If sometimes this table gets deleted, something goes wrong on your computer and this gets wiped out, it will appear as if all your data is gone. However, there are programs that can rescan the entire drive, all the ones and zeros, and figure out what the file was, what the data was, what did it say, what letters of the alphabet, what colors of the picture it was, and put them back together and rebuild this. So if you ever have a hard drive just show nothing, take it to a store, a computer repair shop, and they may be able to retrieve your data by recreating this. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention is about deleting files. Please understand that when Windows deletes a file, it does not actually remove the data. It just goes to the FAT table and kind of draws a line through it and says, that's not there anymore. That's now open for someone else to use. Now, why is that important? Well, let's say you are giving your computer to an organization, a church, a school, and you want to donate your computer. So you go and you just delete all your files, and you hit delete. You go to the recycle bin, you empty the recycle bin. It looks like everything is completely gone. If that were to get in the hands of someone malicious, someone to try to steal data from you, identity theft, tax records, anything like that, then they can do that program I just mentioned, and they can scan and rebuild and get all your data back. So what's the answer to that? Well, there are programs that kind of do the opposite of the scanning and rebuilding, and let's see if we can find one real quick. If you go to Google and type in, and the reason it's called this is because the Army and the military uses this a lot for security purposes, DoD Erase Hard Drive. DoD meaning the Department of Defense. And you can download software. Here are 5 hard disk cleaning and erasing tools. When you run these programs, let me go back and show you, when you run those, they don't simply delete the fat table. They put they write 000000000 to every single bit and byte of your entire hard drive. Then they start over and they write ones to every, just in case something was missed, it write ones to it. And it may do that ones and zero process dozens of times, just so that you know that when you get rid of that computer, there's nothing that someone can retrieve off of that. So just a good tip, if you're ever getting rid of a computer, well, another thing that some people do is they actually keep their hard drives and get rid of the computer, but they keep the drives, or they take a hammer or a drill or a rifle and they just completely destroy the hard drive. So if you just want to make sure your data is not out there, in this day and age with identity theft and hacking and people stealing data and credit cards and social security numbers and all kind of data, you want to be careful with data, especially when you're getting rid of a computer. And so running a program that completely erases by writing ones and zeros is a good idea, or just taking it into your own hands and just destroying the hard drive. That doesn't really help if you're trying to give your computer and actually function and be useful for someone, because they would still need a hard drive. But again, your data is probably more important than your donation. So that's hard drives. We have one more video and then we'll go computer shopping. But just to recap, hard drives, permanent storage, measured in bytes, generally between 250 to 4 terabytes. Western Digital, I mentioned at the very beginning of this video, that's a little outdated information because that is, none of those are popular with SSD and M.2 manufacturers. And then so I'm going to give you some other companies when we go shopping, but you have those companies to start with. Understand the idea of a swap file, understand what fragmentation is, understand the difference between a platter and a solid state. These are both considered solid state drives because this also uses chips, but it is technically, more specifically, an M.2 drive. Understand that folders on your computer that you create are just virtual. They're just for you to see, that the operating system is only concerned about the physical location of the drive, which has nothing to do with the folders. Understand what a fat table is, because I want you to understand how to remove and properly dispose of your computer, or to recover a file. If you ever delete a file, sometimes you can recover that file by recreating the fat table. That's probably it for now. Just checking my notes here. I think that's all that we want to cover on hard drives. In the next video, we're going to talk about some optional, some interfaces, and then we're going to go shopping and look at some prices.